A high-level prisoner swap between Moscow and Washington. A Russian businessman, Viktor Bout, in U.S. custody for a decade, has returned to his homeland. He shared some of his feelings after landing at a Moscow airport.
I was awoken in the middle of the night and told to get ready. No additional information was provided. The most important thing is that I got there.
Bout was sentenced by U.S. authorities back in 2012 to a quarter-century in prison on allegations of arming terrorists and conspiring to kill American citizens. He denies all the accusations. Moscow has said his case was politically motivated. He was exchanged for American basketball player Brittany Griner, who had been convicted of drug offenses in Russia. The swap was conducted in the United Arab Emirates after months of negotiations. Bout's family was elated at the news of his release.
Of course, we always had out hope that Viktor would return home all these years, especially in the last 6 months, when information began to surface that his release was possible. When Maria Butina called me and said, "Hang in there," I realized in a heartbeat that the exchange has been carried out. I immediately got the shakes, and my heart was beating so fast.
We're very grateful to our president, and as a mother, I sincerely thank our foreign ministry, led by Sergei Lavrov. Their diplomats, their employees visited him no matter what, even during a bazaar in New York. They make sure people do not lose hope and know that their motherland does not forget them.
Viktor Bout's lawyer, Steve Zissou, gave us his reviews and views about the case and the long, difficult battle for his client's release.
Let's just say it was quite a journey. Happy to be here and just thrilled that Viktor is back home with Alla and their daughter and the rest of their family and back in Russia. 15 years ago, the U.S. government devised a plot, if you will, to create a crime of this retired Russian citizen living in Moscow, committing no crime against anyone. They target him simply because they didn't like what they thought he had been doing in previous years. And at Viktor's sentencing, I know it's hard to believe, for this talk crime that nothing ever happened with, and no one was ever hurt, and no one was ever damaged. At the sentencing, the U.S. government prosecutors asked that Viktor be sentenced to life without parole, meaning he would never be released. That's the insanity of it. When I took over the case a couple of years ago, the first challenge, of course, was to correct the narrative, to get folks in the U.S. and around the world to appreciate the fact that this merchant of death label that they put on him was really unfair, and that the way this retired Russian citizen living in Moscow was targeted by the U.S. was really a terrible affront to Russian sovereignty. And as a result of that, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, as a result of that, you can actually pinpoint the deterioration of relations between the U.S. and Russia to that moment when Viktor was targeted. And as I've said many times, the U.S. agencies involved decided to target Viktor Bout because they could, without giving any thought to whether or not they should, and the repercussions that followed. A lot of helpful things happened along the way. And it starts with Alla Bout, Viktor's wife, who never gave up and never tired of trying to ensure that he would be freed. President Putin, who never gave up the notion that Viktor Bout was wrongfully taken from his fellow citizens and his family. Foreign Minister Lavrov was consistently in Viktor's corner, as was Ambassador Antonov, who even recently went to visit Viktor in the prison that is referred to as in America as the Guantanamo of the North. That's how bad the conditions are there. And we were fortunate that the judge at Viktor's trial, Judge Shinlin, made some very important findings at his sentencing that were really strong and supportive and pointed out several of the things that undermined this merchant of death narrative that had taken hold in the U.S. And so when I first took over the case and I looked over the record and the transcript and the sentencing material, I noticed how powerful her words were, and I noticed that they had never been brought to anyone's attention that I knew of anyway. And so the first thing I did was I gave her a call. She had been retired at the time. To my great surprise, she not only spoke to me, but she stood by her words and was willing to go public with her views that the sentence that she was forced to impose on Victor was way too high, and she would have given him a much lower sentence if she had the ability to do so. And then she went public, frankly, speaking to anyone who would call her, expressing those same thoughts. I'm surprised he survived because, it's not like, look, the older you get, the more likely you are to suffer some sort of catastrophic illness suddenly. And Victor was getting up there in years. He's well into his 50s now. And you just don't call 911 there. They don't have actual physicians. They don't ship you off to a hospital unless you're in a coma. So he had several serious ailments. But Victor is an exceedingly strong man. He knows how to take care of himself, to protect himself. He makes sure to the extent that he can, eat properly. So there were times when I was concerned that he would even survive to make it to this swap. So you hear all over U.S. news about, for example, Brittany Griner going to a penal colony. Well, there are penal colonies all over the United States. In fact, you folks may know about the 13th Amendment. That's the amendment that abolished slavery in the United States, but it abolished slavery for all but one category of person, and that's prisoners in U.S. jails. And so you have folks who are forced to work in a lot of states and some federal prisons. They're paid 35 cents an hour. They don't have any protections. They don't get to choose where they work or the conditions of their work. They don't get unemployment insurance. It doesn't contribute to Social Security or Medicare. So I think that's one of the reasons this took so long.